is agreed by a majority of members present. I declare the motion passed. Inland Revenue Amendment Bill 2014. Committee stage. Council is now in committee. And I'll propose the question to you, and that is that the following clauses stand part of the Inland Revenue Amendment Bill 2014. Clauses 1 to 7. Does any member wish to speak? Mr. Albert Chan. Don't be afraid. I'm not asking for a quorum count. I'm just standing to speak. Chairman, in my second reading speech, I pointed out that the tax concessions actually are unreasonable and illogical. And talking about their objective results, I think they are biased. Let us look at some concrete information, and you will understand more where the problem lies and its severity. If you look at the distribution of taxes, I have made my own table, and the so-called concessions and where they go. Talking about income, from 210,000 to 240,000 every year, there are about 120,000 people, meaning $750 each. And it involves public money to the tune of $90 million. In other words, each one can only get $750. If you earn 240,000 to 270,000, then the concession would be 1,200 each. And this will involve 110,000 taxpayers. And the public money involved is 137 million. If you earn 270,000 to 300,000, there are about 100,000 such taxpayers, and each will get a concession of $1,800, involving $190 million. And if you earn $300,000 to $400,000 every year, then we are talking about 257,000 people, averaging out to $4,000 each, now according to the percentage of concessions. And altogether, it involves $1 billion. This will be shared among 250,000, so $4,000 each. As for 400,000 to 500,000, you get $10,000 back. And the public revenue foregone is 100 or over $1.58 billion. And therefore, from 210,000 to $500,000 for these people in these brackets, that would mean a revenue foregone of $3 billion. That is a big figure. For people earning over $500,000 every year, there are 353,000 taxpayers in this bracket, and that involves $3.5 billion in terms of public money. So my comment was that even if you earn $50,000 a month, it's not regarded as high income. But of course, some people earn more than $1 million a month. However, even for people with quite a good income, they do not enjoy, or actually they get most of the concessions. This brings me back to the logic of public finance management, its philosophy, and also its impact on the public. To some middle-class people, if they get back $10,000, they would think it is not bad. But compared to what the people power is talking about, and that is $10,000 each for all in society, then a 4P family will get $40,000. For those who earn $1 million a month, they can't even buy a bottle of red wine with $10,000. So talking about the handling of tax income and improvement to people's livelihood, this so-called tax concession is basically negligible. I cannot say there is actually no help, but in terms of the raising of people's quality of life and from the angle of public finance management, I think it is a total failure because its design is not justified in any way. They would say, oh, okay, let us give some to these and give some to others. This is a kind of political pork barreling. It's very easy to do pork barreling. Here I give you some rates concession, I give you some profit tax concession, and you some salary tax concession. It doesn't matter how much each one gets. There is no connection to your quality of life because it is a kind of political pork barreling. I do not have any concern about your quality of living, and I do not concern myself with any decisions about public finance management. Because if you want to do it, you definitely have to do some assessments. You have to look at different stratum in society and the age brackets of people, how much income they are getting. If I can give this family $10,000 to $20,000, then perhaps I will be able to do something about the livelihood or quality of life of this family. Or I would be able to meet their needs. In many countries, if they have a huge housing problem, then they will stipulate that if the rental you pay exceeds 25% of your income, then you will get a subsidy from government for you to pay whatever is over 25% of your income. That is based on the actual need of the families concerned. In other words, if the rental you pay exceeds 25% of your income, then that would mean that you have some pressure maintaining a basic quality of life. If the result of your assessment is that people need the subsidy for their livelihood, if the rental paid is over 25% of the income, then it would mean this family may not be able to buy as much food as they like, even baby formula for the children, and also to buy clothing, etc. In other words, you have to have these assessments and projections. Please come back to this bill. Thank you, Chairman. I'm referring to Clause 4. I have tabulated these figures myself. Actually, as what the SFST is doing, it looks like very easy that it would be 75% at most or $10,000. Looks simple, but if you do a deeper analysis, if you look at this from the angle of public finance management philosophies, you will see that this is quite ridiculous. So I'm referring to Clause 4. And I like to point out the problems. Clause 5, I have more or less analyzed it in my second reading speech, and I won't repeat myself. Let me turn to Clause 6. This is talking about the basic tax allowance. This is in line with what I have been proposing. It is set at $120,000. In other words, if you earn $10,000 a month or above, then you have to pay tax. As the financial secretary, as the person managing public finance, then of course you have to assess the Hong Kong situation where traveling expenses and rentals are high, where the index of living is high. If I earn $10,000 a month, should I be required to pay tax? You have to do the assessment.
Now, of course, I understand that it's the responsibility of members of the public to pay tax, but then there are indirect taxes like rates, like petrol duty. So there are many types of indirect taxes. So for those who earn $120,000 or above per year, how come these people must pay tax? Which clause are you on? Clause 6. Clause 6, Chairman. The basic allowance of $120,000. First column, second column. So this amends Schedule 4 to increase the dependent parents' allowance. But then the adjustment is based on the basic allowance of $120,000. So can I ask you which part of the clause you are speaking on, or you have been speaking on? Yes, I think I can speak in a clearer and more focused manner. I think the base figure is very important. You have to have the base figure before you can have the presumption. My logic is that the basis is wrong. Many people can't make ends meet. Look at the median wage, $11,500 a month. So this is the median income, and I think the government is not drawing a line at the reasonable level. I want some more time to tidy up my thoughts, so I want a quorum count now.
Mr. Albert Chan, I want to look at Clause 6, the schedule in Clause 6. First one, basic allowance and the married person's allowance. Mr. Chan. If you have read the electrical brief and the note, the first item and the second item, basic allowance, married person's allowance, there's no change from 2013 to 14, 2014 to 2015. This amendment is about the dependent parent, grandparent allowance. So please speak on the amendment. Well, the amendment is unreasonable. So it goes to show that the parent allowance is even more unreasonable. But I would take your advice, and I won't speak on Part 1 and Part 2 of the schedule again. The proposed amendment shows that the government is not really clear about why we need this amendment. For parent allowance, it's just going up to the $40,000. The government is too mean. The original allowance is $38,000. It's going to increase from $38,000 to $40,000. An increase of $2,000 is a joke. As I've said time and again, what is the justification for this? You have to explain to people why $2,000 is considered enough as an increase. You are the account keeper. You must tell people the justification behind the proposed increase. Well, I gather you are just going to read from a prepared script, and you won't tell people why. So it's just done haphazardly, or it's just a gesture. It's a nominal increase. It's better than nothing. If you have to support your parent, and if you have to do it with $40,000 a year, well, is it enough? It's a disgrace. I won't comment on other details. If you look at the other proposed amendments, the amendments are all involve small changes. There's a lack of direction, lack of logic, and lack of care for our people on the part of the government. Does any other member wish to speak? Mr. Chi-chuen. Thank you, Chairman. In the second reading debate, I said a little bit about the allowance for the supporting the dependent parents, the increase from $38,000 to $40,000, which I consider a very small favor, a small increase. Is it the government's view that we should pay our parents $33,300 a month to support the parent? According to an NGO representing elderly persons' welfare, to lead a decent life, it takes not just such a small sum. It takes more than just a small sum. The expenses would amount to more than $3,000. Say $1,800 for food, transportation, $160, fuel, $180, $200 for medical, and or if you add them up, it would be 3,200. Even for the elderly, the living in poverty, according to Oxford firm, the total sum will be $3,900.
So if you divide $40,000 by 12, it averages out to $3,300 per month, and it won't give elderly people a decent life. We would say that the allowance for supporting parents over 60 years should be $80,000, so they can have $6,500 each. And all that should be tax deductible, so that this kind of allowance will encourage children to maintain parents over the years of 60 years old. When Mr. Chi-chuen spoke at the second reading debate, he said that he had conducted ample consultation, but he would also have to avail himself to the financial position of the government, and that he cannot be biased. Now, I don't understand. If you help elderly people, if you raise the allowance for supporting your parents, do you think somebody will protest against it? Do you think you will be accused of wasting public money? We are just talking about giving a decent living to the elderly. Why is that wrong? We want you to formulate long-term universal retirement protection. We don't know how long we have to wait, but this one is a short-term measure. You can do it year after year. Now, of course, it will not be easy for you to decrease it once it is increased. I think this is your mentality. So regardless of reality, regardless of the situation in society, you just increase it by a small margin every year, maybe $2,000 this time around. If you really want to encourage Hong Kong people to support their parents, I talked about homes for the elderly in my second reading speech, and here I'm talking about supporting parents. In other words, if you don't want to sign in a certificate or statement to say you do not support your parents, then you should help them with tax allowance. As for supporting your parents who are 55 to 59 years old, it is still even less. It is raised from $19,000 to $20,000. It's just a drop in the ocean. Many young couples have to support their parents who are below the age of 60. These people have not retired, but if you ask an elderly person of 55 years to find a job, it will be very difficult. And every month, you would need at least $3,000 to support them. So the tax allowance should at least be increased to $40,000. As for the supporting of siblings, the allowances have not been increased. That I know, Chairman, $33,000. I like to say that this is not reasonable. Is it more expensive to support an elderly person or a sibling? I think you know in your heart who will need to eat more, who will need to go out more, who need to buy more clothing. If you have to support your sibling, very often it will be for paying school fees. It will usually be supporting your younger brothers and sisters. Since 2012, the allowance has not been increased. We think you are not realistic. From 2012 to now, school fees, traveling fees, etc. I don't think you need me to cite figures. If the sibling is below 18 years and he or she has to go into university, then you can do your sums. $33,000 would average out to less than $3,000 every month. And it's very difficult to cope with the living expenses for the sibling concerned. Therefore, the tax allowance should be increased to $66,000. As for allowance for children, it still stands at $70,000 per child. It is still too low. $70,000 would mean that you assume that the reasonable expenditure every month to support a child is $6,000. But given the present situation, middle-class families cannot just make use of $6,000 to maintain a child every month because they need to pay school fees. And of course, if you study in a government school, you don't have to pay, but they have to go to tuition classes, interest classes. They have to learn to play musical instruments. As you know, piano is just the basic. You have to add one instrument to the piano. And if your child is in kindergarten, as you know, it costs more than going to university. According to a survey, the expenditure for a child is $4,100 every month for grassroots children. And according to Bohemia Foundation, for middle-class families, you need to spend $5 million for keeping your child until he goes to university, or $250,000 every year. Therefore, we hope the allowance will be increased to $90,000. And also, if the child is 18 years old, who is not studying but is unemployed, they should also enjoy the allowance. Actually, there are many young people who just stay at home. They don't go to school. They don't get a job. They just stay at home all the time, and they have to be supported by their parents. As for the disabled, again, the allowance is only $66,000. The carer would have to get assistance to help take care of the disabled. In fact, if you can get a carer with $4,000 a month, you will be lucky, and you have to pay for the food, etc. And a survey shows that you need at least $10,000 to keep a disabled person every month. Therefore, the allowance should be increased to $100,000 so more people can benefit. I'm going to refer to Clause 7 now. Clause 7 includes two schedules. Schedule 31, transitional provisions relating to provisional salaries tax in respect of the year of assessment 2014-15, and then the second schedule, reduction of taxes for year of assessment 2013-14. In Schedule 31, now if you want to delay the payment of provisional salaries tax in 31(2) bracket 1, if the expected residential fees for an elderly person is expected to exceed $76,000, then you can apply for holding over of the whole or part of the tax to be paid for 2014-15. So you can wait until you pay your salaries tax in 2014-15. This is on the basis that when you fill out your tax demand note, you may not know the total residential expenses for an elderly person, and you may not know that it will be increased to $80,000. Therefore, you allow them that before they actually pay taxes, they can ask for holding over so that they can apply for a higher figure. However, the period for doing so is very weird. According to 4 of Schedule 31, if they want to apply for holding over, they can only do so not later than 28 days before the date by which the provisional salaries tax is to be paid, or 14 days after the date of the notice for payment of provisional salaries tax. I'm of the view that if you stipulate that you allow people only to do so 28 days before the day for which the provisional salaries tax is to be paid, I think it is not reasonable. The administration definitely has the capability to tackle or process such applications even a few days, just a few days before the deadline. Therefore, For the benefit of the taxpayer, you should change 28 days to 3 days so the public have more time to consider whether the expected expenses would exceed $76,000, so they want to apply for holding over of salaries tax payment.
And then Schedule 31, 4, 1 and 2 duplicate each other. 4.1 says concerning the application must be made not later than 28 days before the day by which the provisional salaries tax is to be paid, or 14 days after the date of the notice for payment of provisional salaries tax under Section 63C bracket 6, whichever is the later. Now, because the notice of a provisional salaries tax is usually issued on a certain date, and so in fact the period stipulated in para A already covers the period stipulated as a paragraph B, and so B is really not necessary. And then Schedule 31.4.4, if the Commissioner is satisfied that it is appropriate to do so, the Commissioner may either generally or in a particular case extend the time within which the application may be made. Now, in fact, the Chinese for generally reads 一般地, but in Chinese we seldom say 一般地. It's in fact a direct or literal translation of generally. I think the Chinese should read 在通常情況下, in other words, meaning generally or under normal circumstances. So if the Commissioner is satisfied that it is appropriate to do so, the Commissioner may either under normal circumstances or in a particular case extend the time, blah, blah, blah. And that is the words 如此 in Chinese concerning extending the time within which the application may be made. These two Chinese characters are unnecessary. And then on receipt of the application, the Commissioner must consider the application. And then the Commissioner, of course, must by notice in writing inform the applicant of the Commissioner's decision. But it doesn't say by what time. The Commissioner must, by notice in writing, inform the applicant of the Commissioner's decision. So I think there should be a deadline stipulated. For example, the Commissioner must, within 3 months, for example, inform the applicant of the Commissioner's decision. Does any other member wish to speak? Or Secretary. And I'll put the question to you, and that is clauses 1 to 7 stand part of the bill. Those in favour, please raise their hands. Mr. Chi-chuen claims a division. The bell will ring for 5 minutes.
開始表決。
Voting begins.
請各位核對表決。
Members, please check the votes you've cast. If there are no queries, voting is closed. The results are displayed. 48 present, 45 yes, 2 noes, no abstention. The question is agreed by a majority of the members present. I declare the motion passed. Council now resumes. Third reading, Inland Revenue Amendment Bill 2014. Secretary. President, the Inland Revenue Amendment